Want to see how I made this beautiful starry sky at the top of my resin nightlight with only the help of a light base? If you do, stay tuned and enjoy the video. For a long time I've been wanting to try out fibre optic cable in resin, and so I got myself some. It's from Amazon and it's made of plastic. So this is the same thing that they use when they're making a star effect on ceilings. It used to be really popular to have lamps made out of this, and what happens is the light shines at the base of the cable and travels up and shines out at the other end. So I thought it would be really good to immerse it in resin so that I could have the light at the base and then the light coming out at the top. So I'm going to have like a starry sky with it. I'm not using a silicone mould this time. I bought myself some acrylic sheets, and these are 2mm thick. They're 10 centimetres by 15 centimetres in size, so I won't have to cut them, they're just right. And I'm also going to be using some UV resin, and this is the new one from JDiction, and you get the 3 resins in there, the high viscosity, the low viscosity and the regular. And I've also got my JDiction UV lamp to cure the UV resin. I will be using epoxy resin as well later on, but for now, let's get started. So the plan is to add a tiny droplet of UV resin onto the acrylic for each strand of the fibre optic cable. And for that, I've decided to use the high viscosity UV resin because it's really good at staying in the place where you put it. It forms a nice little domed droplet and it doesn't run about all over the place because it's nice and thick. All the acrylic sheets have protective paper on both sides, and I've marked the section where I'm going to be putting the stars on each one, and then from that place I will be folding back so just part of the acrylic is exposed, and that will protect the rest of the acrylic and also give me a guideline for where to put my stars. It's important to wear gloves and eye protection when you're using UV resin and a UV lamp. I forgot just for a moment to put my gloves on, so on this first drop there's no gloves, but I promise after that the gloves are on and I'm being safe. So I'm just adding a little drop there, and then I get my piece of fibre cable which I've already measured out. I've done lots of them to the same length, nice and long, so I wanted to make sure they didn't end up too short, so I overcompensated like you do. And then I held it in position, put it under the lamp and held it there for a moment, about 15 seconds I think, until it was cured enough to keep it in place. You don't have to do each one for 2 minutes, which is what you usually do for UV resin. As long as it stays still, that's fine, because it will get 2 minutes by the time I've done all the other ones. It will get more than 2 minutes actually. And that was the moment I realised I wasn't wearing my gloves. And when I mentioned eye protection before, what I mean is something like a pair of sunglasses will be good. Something to protect your eyes from the UV light. So that's the kind of protection I meant. Right then, so as you will imagine, I spent a long time positioning all the pieces of the fibre optic cable. A long time. But it doesn't matter, it's all part of the process and I don't mind. I was excited to see how it would turn out, so I enjoyed it. I did struggle with the distribution of the fibre optics. I wanted it to be random and not to be too regular. I wanted it to look natural, and that is something I struggled with. But I did my best and just carried on and filled it up as much as I could. So skipping ahead in time, this is the last one that I just finished, and as you can see it's all very messy. So now I need to tidy it up a bit so it's easier to work with. And what I decided to do was peel back the paper, cut most of it away because I needed rid of most of it, but I left just enough paper so that I could add a piece of strong tape on top to keep those fibres in position. I didn't want to put the tape directly onto the acrylic. That's why I left just a square of the protective paper there, because the strong tape would leave a mark and the protective paper doesn't. So there we have all 4 sides ready. Now I need to do the base, which will eventually be the top of the finished piece. So I wanted some stars on that as well. So I found an old piece of acrylic which was larger than what I needed it to be, and I folded back the protective film and I just repeated the process, but this time I tried to make it more of kind of a pattern, like a stripe of stars going across, rather than filling up the whole of the area. And as you can see, I found my UV torch, which ended up being a lot easier to use for this than the lamp. And once again, it was very messy and chaotic looking, so this time I used a cable tie to hold them all together and a little bit more in one place. And as you might guess, this was quite difficult for me to film this project that I'm showing you today. Because of all those fibres there in the way, I kind of had 2 cameras on the go, so you get a side view sometimes as well. But still, I struggled. So sometimes I've had to cut parts out and just show you a little bit, but I think you'll get the gist of it. This is one of those times. I tried filming the process of sticking the sides onto the base. I got a little bit of filming done, but in the end I gave up with filming it because it was just so difficult to do. Anyway, as you can see, I've used my hot melt glue gun and I'm just gluing each side to the base, and then I glued up along all the edges as well until it was completely sealed. And there we are, as if by magic. I missed out most of the filming for that. Now, I wanted to add my resin to the bottom next, but I didn't want to get resin all down the sides of the acrylic whilst, adding it, and I could see that that could be a problem. So I made my own little improvised funnel. It's just a paper cup. I'm just making a bit of a hole in the middle there, and then I've got some tubing which I stuck into the hole and glued around the edge. So then I had my own little funnel for adding the resin directly to the bottom without having to do it, pouring it from the top of that cuboid. Right, it's time for the resin. I'm using JDiction's deep pour resin for my first layer. It's a 2-to-1 ratio, so you want 2 parts of part A to 1 part of part B. I think I measured 125 millilitres of B and 250 of A, but it was all a bit of a guess. I wasn't really sure how much I would need to get to the top of those stars, so I just, as usual, did more, so I had definitely enough. I always end up with too much, but I think it's best to have too much than too little, don't you? Definitely. So I mixed it for about 4 minutes. You do need to mix it for longer when it's more resin, just to make sure it's all mixed. And once I'd finished mixing, I looked at it and I thought, I'm pretty sure I've got too much, so I can put some in another vessel and just keep it to the side, just in case I need it. So, right, now we need some pigment. I decided to use my deep hyacinth blue, which is one of Laura's own colours from Laura's Art Corner. She has a range of her own colours that she's made, and look at this. Isn't that just... Words can't describe that colour, can they? And wait till you see it start getting mixed in. I thought that colour would work really nice for a night sky, rather than doing black, because it's not really black anyway, is it? It's always like a really dark blue, in my opinion anyway. And I thought it would look much nicer. Look at that. I just love it. Definitely my favourite. And I think I already said deep hyacinth blue from Laura's Art Corner. Right, so next it was time to see if my improvised funnel had worked. And it did. It worked, but it was a lot slower than I thought it would be. But it worked, so that's all that matters, doesn't it? I've got plenty of time, I don't mind if it's slower. So yeah, that I poured in the resin so that it was just to the top of the stars. I just wanted a band of the starry sky. However, it didn't quite turn out like that, which I'll explain in a minute. But anyway, that was the idea. Okay, so at that stage it would have been perfect and I should have left it. Unfortunately, I didn't. I decided to leave it for about 3 hours so it could really thicken up. And then with that leftover resin that I had, I thought it would be a good idea to add some sky blue, which I knew I was going to be doing a sky blue layer next. But I thought if I add some sky blue now, with that leftover little bit of resin, I might get like a gradual change from the dark blue to the light blue. And then there wouldn't be such a big difference when I do the sky blue layer next. I hope that makes sense. So yeah, I thought I'd just add that to the top while it was all still, runny, and hope that they would merge nicely. But they didn't. It all ended up just dark blue. And then I had a really thick stripe of dark blue at the bottom, and it was way past the stars, which is really not what I was going for. But I carried on. You've got to carry on, haven't you? Especially when you've put so much time and effort into something. You've just got to keep going and see what happens. Okay, so it's the next day here, and as you can see on that blue layer that I was just talking about, you can't tell that there was any light blue in there, and it's just made the blue layer really thick. The stars are at the top and they suddenly stop. But never mind, eh? Now I am adding some sky, and it will stay in position this time because my first layer is cured. So after I've finished with the sky and that's cured, we're going to add some clouds. You've got to think of it all upside down. Those fibres that you can see there are all going to be hopefully looking like rain in the clear layer that I do after the clouds. So if you're thinking upside down like I am, it might start to make sense. Okay then, so the layer of sky is cured and now it's time for some clouds. Now, I know that you can use soap and you can put soap in the microwave after you've grated it, I believe. And yeah, you can use soap in the microwave. However, I've tried it before and it didn't work out well for me or for my microwave. I am not doing that one again. Maybe I used the wrong kind of soap, but anyway, I'm using good old cotton wool and mixing it with resin. So I've just got some cotton wool balls, I've unravelled them and I'm chopping them up into small pieces. Next, I mixed up some high gloss epoxy resin, which is also for JDiction. We're having a JDiction day today. And I gave it a really good mix. You don't want any dry bits of cotton wool in there. So after I'd given it a really good mix, I was able to take it out with my hands. I did get very, very messy. I went through a few pairs of gloves before this was finished and just added it in and put it into place and manoeuvred it about with a lollipop stick until I was happy with it, and then I just kept on going. I didn't film it all. It did take me a while, and you don't need to see it all, do you? You just need to see the basics of how I did it. Okay, so here's the cloudy layer all finished and cured. So next we're ready for the clear layer, but I want to have a rainbow in there. So next I'm going to be making a rainbow. I was lucky enough to receive the new set of coloured UV resins from JDiction. This is a brand new thing for them, and I was dying to try them out, and I thought they'd work really well to make a rainbow. I've drawn a couple of rough guidelines on a piece of paper so that I've got some idea of the shape I'm doing and the size, of course. And I've got a piece of acrylic sheet, again, just an old scrap, and I'm going to be applying it onto that and taking it off the acrylic afterwards. I'm just using red, yellow, blue and purple. I'm not going for the whole 7 colours because you naturally get those, obviously, don't you, as the colours merge. So I didn't see the point in going through the whole spectrum of colours. And so, yeah, it was just a case of applying it very carefully, all in one go. I didn't cure each line separately. I wanted the colours to merge to get the natural rainbow effect. And, you know, it's not an authentic looking rainbow, but it'll do. It's not bad at all. So once I'd finished applying the coloured UV resin, there were a couple of bubbles in there and I just popped them with a skewer, and then I put it under the UV lamp and cured it for about 2 or 3 minutes. Can't remember exactly, but yeah, make sure it's fully cured, and then all you have to do is take it off the acrylic, and for that I used a craft knife and I just levered off a little bit to start with, and then the rest came off really easily. Then I snipped off one end at a right angle with my scissors, because that's the side that's going to be stuck to the side of the acrylic cuboid. You'll see, don't worry, you'll see in a second. So I'm just adding a little bit of UV resin, putting it into position, using my UV torch to cure it, and then it should stay in position when I add my clear layer of epoxy. And speaking of which, here it is. Here's my clear layer of JDiction's deep pore epoxy resin. And my room was very cold, as you can see from the bubbles. It's hard to get rid of bubbles when it's cold, but they did all come out. It just took longer to cure, that was all. And once it was cured, I just snipped off the bottom of the rainbow, and I had to do it from at an angle, so I just did it from each angle so it was as flat as I could get it, and then we were ready for the next layer. So how are you keeping up with the thinking upside down aspect? Are you confused? Well, you might be more confused now, because what I'm doing now is sea foam. I want the bottom of my piece to be the ocean, and at the top of the ocean I want some sea foam. So now I've got some of the JDiction 4-hour epoxy resin, because I want it to cure a little bit more quickly than my last layer, and I'm just making sure it's completely covering the last layer of resin. I don't want much in there, just a few millimeters in depth. And then what I'm going to do is put some white resin on the top, and you'll see in a moment. So as you can see there, I was making a bit of a mess, but anyway, I'm just moving it all around until it's all covered. So with my remaining epoxy resin, I added some white opaque pigment. It's the Colour Fun pigment from Resin Pro. I don't know if they still do it, but that's what I like to use for this. Once I'd finished mixing the white resin to a nice opaque white, I used a lollipop stick to drizzle it on quite randomly. I wanted it to sink down and look like waves in the sea. And so, yeah, just doing it all over quite randomly and trying to leave enough space for the colour, which will be in the next layer, to show through. I didn't want it to be too white, just enough to make it look like a stormy sea. Okay then, so that sea foam would have looked really good. However, I did make a mistake. I actually made 2 mistakes in this clip. So I thought my resin was cured enough to add the next layer, because it was just a thin layer. It was firm, but I knew it wasn't completely cured, but I thought it'll be okay, no worries. And I was using glass in this layer, just little pieces of polished glass. I thought the light would shine nicely through that with the pigment as well. But the problem was, which you will see later, is the glass did sink into the previous layer, which wasn't completely cured. So that was my first mistake. My second mistake was I didn't like my colours, basically. They were too dark, too much green, too much dark colours as well. I'm going to show you this bit really quickly, just so you saw what I did. But what did happen is I ended up pouring it out and refilling it with a colour I was happy with. I'd gone to so much trouble with this. I didn't want to be dissatisfied with the colour on the last hurdle. It would have been such a shame. So yeah, that's the second mistake that happened. Right then, so after pouring the majority of it out, as you can see, there's still some left, but I thought that would be fine. It would mix with the new colour I was putting in and add a little bit of interest. I didn't mind that there was just a little bit left. I really didn't want to go scooping everything out and cleaning everything. Definitely not. Too messy. So this time I added some like a light blue and some periwinkle glow pigment, which is like a whitish blue, and I thought those would lighten it up nicely. And that was it really. I just filled it up, added a little bit more glass, and it was time to wait for it to cure, and then we were ready for the final quick layer. So once that layer was cured, it was time to clip away all those pieces of the fibre cable, which I was so happy about. I couldn't wait to get rid of it all because it'd been quite a trial. They'd got in the way all that time, and I just wanted to say goodbye to them. So I just used my jewellery snips and snipped it all away, and then just added a clear layer of the fast cure resin, JDiction's fast cure resin, and just needed to wait for that to cure, and we were ready to demould it. It's kind of demoulding it, isn't it? It's not the same demoulding you will normally see from me, but yeah, it was time to take off the acrylic. Okay, first I needed to remove as much of the hot melt glue as I could. A lot of it just came off easily, and some of it I just used my jewellery snips for, and then the acrylic came off a lot easier. And actually I was a bit worried about taking off the acrylic, but it came off quite easy, as you will see now. So once the acrylic was all removed, I cleaned up some of the messy edges with my deburring tool, and it was time to have a look at it standing on its light base. Right, so here's a little clip of the sky close up with the curtains closed, just so you can see how much they glow. And then we'll go back to daylight so you can see the rest of it a little bit better. So yeah, they look great, don't they? Nice bright starry sky. And now we're in daylight so you can see everything a little bit more clearly. I love the colour of that night sky. And here you can see what I was saying about the sea foam, how the glass sunk down into that layer. But I kind of like it. It's growing on me. It looks really stormy, doesn't it? And I like the effect of the fibre optic cable making it look like it's raining. I really like that too. So yeah, I'm really, really happy with it. What do you think? I'd like to know what you think in the comments. And even though so much work went into this, and there's things I would change about it, I did learn so much about different things that I haven't tried before, especially the clouds. Just look at those clouds. I think actually the clouds are my favourite part of the whole thing. I think they're brilliant. And the rain as well, it actually looks like rain. Yeah, I'm very, very happy with what I've learned and the outcome really. Yeah, I think if I did it again, which probably won't, I only ever do things once, but if I did it again, I'd do less of the dark blue and more of the clear layer so you can see the stormy sky and the sea a little bit better. That area is a little bit small really, but anyway, that's what I would change if I did it again, but I'm still happy with the outcome. Well, it was a long video this week, and if you've managed to stay here right till the end, thank you. I appreciate your support and I appreciate you watching all the way to the end, and I hope you've enjoyed it and learned something from it just like I did. Please give me a thumbs up if you have enjoyed it, that helps immensely. And subscribe if you haven't already done so, that's also a great help. And I will see you again next week. Thank you for watching and bye for now.